going to be about connecting with students and mastering effective communication and building rapport as GAs and TAs.
Okay. So before we get going, I just want to do a little land acknowledgement for us. So I'd like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the land that the University of Windsor resides on is the traditional territories of the Three Fires Confederacy, including the Ojibwe, the Potawatomi, and the Odawa tribes. And understanding that we as a group may not be from Windsor, we may be participating from different areas in Canada or across the world. I'd like to extend this greeting to the entirety of Turtle Island and acknowledge that the traditional custodians of this land, including their wisdom and connection to this place.
Okay, just a little brief introduction to the both of us. My name is Brennan. I have been a TA for 3 semesters in the history department, and I have a general bachelor's degree in history, and I have a bachelor's of education.
And I'm Danielle. I'm a 4th-year PhD candidate in the Department of Kinesiology. I've been a GA here for 5 years. I'm going into my 6th year of doing that, and I've been a course instructor for 2 semesters now here at the University of Windsor. So the learning objectives for today's session, we're hoping that you'll gain a couple of skills and some understanding. So by the end of today's session, we're hoping that you'll be able to demonstrate the use of effective communication techniques. We're hoping that you'll have some ability to create and foster a positive learning environment, either as a GATA or as an instructor. We're hoping to help give you some tools to develop empathy and understanding towards students' experiences and the challenges that they may face. And we're hoping to help you understand different conflict resolution strategies that may arise throughout your career as a GATA. And then also we have an activity, so we're hoping to give you some practical experience with a very common challenge that is typically faced by GAs and TAs. So what is rapport? Rapport is, at its heart, it's a state of mutual understanding with another person or group. So it's this shared point of view that you share with someone. It's based on communication, it's mutual understanding. So it is a relationship at its heart. It's a connection between individuals based on sympathy or some kind of emotional bond. In this case, the rapport is that mutual relationship between you as a GA or TA, or even as an instructor, and the students who are coming to you for help or understanding or whatever it is that they're coming to you for. So, but why does this matter? Why is rapport important for us to understand? It affects both our personal and our professional lives. So in this realm, it would be our professional understanding, our professional lives, and allows us to foster these positive working relationships and interactions based on that mutual understanding and respect. So in this case, it would be coming into your sessions with students or coming into your meetings, communication, email, whatever it may be, with that mutual understanding, with a goal in mind and an understanding that you're going to work together to try to achieve that goal. So what does mutual or what does rapport look like? What does it look like to build rapport? It's this mutual attentiveness. So you're both focused on and interested in what the other person is saying, what the other person is doing. So in that case, it's, having that communication, you as a GATA trying to understand what is the student coming to you for? Are they upset about a mark or something? Are they trying to gain a deeper understanding of the content? Are they looking for help with something? So what are they saying? What are they doing? Are you attended to their needs, to their communication? And vice versa for the students coming to you. Are they attending to what you're saying? Are they trying to pay attention and respect your experience and your ability to help them? It's also based on positivity. So not necessarily friendly, but you're both, you have a cordial attitude, you have cordial communication, and you show care and concern for one another. So this kind of has its biggest foundation in respect, right? So you're respecting one another. You're respecting the students for coming to you for help. They're there to learn at the heart, your understanding of what they may go through. And then the concern how can you help them? You're there as a GATA, you have a job to do, to mark, to provide office hours or support to the students, but at its heart, you're there to promote their learning, right? To help their learning process. So demonstrating that you have that positivity, that concern to help them get to where they hope to be. And then the students as well coming to you with that positivity. So they understand that, hopefully, that you're there to help them. So being able to have that care, that concern, to treat you with respect. Really, that positivity is based on that mutual respect. And then coordination, right? So you're feeling in sync with one another, you share a common understanding or that common goal. So this is really based on the energy levels, the tone of the conversation or the communication, and the body language if you're meeting in person. So being able to have that respectful kind of interaction. If somebody is a little bit standoffish, if you're a little bit standoffish with their students, they're not going to want to come to you. And if you're a little bit standoffish or, like in power, demonstrating your quote unquote power as a GATA, they're not going to want to come to you because they're not going to feel that authentic connection.
Okay, so we're going to get into some effective communication techniques that you can use as a TA or GA. And we put this one first since active listening is very, very important as a TA or GA. And active listening means that you as a teacher are understanding what your students are saying. And as well, it makes your students feel like you are paying attention to them. Active listening ensures that nobody feels dismissed. So if you are actively listening, that means you aren't like thinking about something else while someone is talking to you. You are imparting to them why what they're saying is important to you. You're listening, you're making them feel understood. So you're actively listening, and that helps students feel like you are respecting them. So active listening skills, what you can do to ensure that students know that they are being listened to attentively. Some skills that you might want to use are repeating or paraphrasing someone's answer to make sure that you are completely understanding what they are saying. So if they are coming to you with a concern, when they're done speaking, you think in your head, what is the most important part of what they said? What did you understand? And you say, okay, so I understand that you're upset about your mark, about X, Y, and Z. So they can tell that you were listening to what they're saying and you weren't just thinking about something else. Um, Along with that, you want to make sure that you are listening to understand, not just thinking about your own response. So this is something that I think you do automatically. And if you're thinking more about it, then you should not be like thinking about your own response while they're speaking. This is a common thing that we do in conversation of like, oh yeah, my friend is telling me a story about one time they were on a boat. I'm thinking about the time that I was on a boat, so I'm going to tell them that story next. So you are listening to understand. So between the time that they are speaking and you're speaking, you are listening to what they're saying, and then you think about your response afterwards. So you are understanding what they're saying. You are then repeating what they said back to them, and then you are responding. So you are being very specific, very deliberate with what you're saying, and you're not just trying to have a rebuttal as fast as possible. Some more effective communication techniques that you can use as a TA or GA are some nonverbal communication cues. These are obviously something that you would use when you're speaking to someone face to face, not over email. So you can communicate non-verbally in addition to what you say verbally. So in addition to thinking of your response after they're speaking, while they are speaking, you're making eye contact. And that's useful to impart that you are paying attention to them. But keep in mind that some students may not be comfortable making eye contact. So that's when other forms of nonverbal communication, such as body language, nodding, and your facial expressions. So instead of making eye contact, maybe they are like nodding. Maybe yes, they're looking thoughtful. They're not looking at their phone. Your posture is like aligned with the students. You're not just facing another direction, not paying attention. So you are able to impart using your body language, your eye contact, that you are paying attention, you're listening to what they're saying, and you're respecting their time. So that kind of helps students feel like they are being respected and you're respecting their time. Another effective communication technique that is helpful for a TA or GA is asking open-ended questions. So I know personally, I've taught some labs or tutorials, and in order to get a positive conversation or discussion going amongst students, you need to ask open-ended questions. So that's a question with an open-ended prompt that will elicit more than a yes or a no. So this encourages students to engage with each other's ideas by allowing them room to express a variety of thoughts on a topic so other students can react or respond. So by sharing their response to an open-ended question, other students in the room are thinking about what they're saying and they can have a response or reaction, or that is maybe creating a new topic to discuss. So you're asking a question that is more than a, do you understand, yes or no? Maybe asking someone's opinions on a topic, or asking if anyone had anything they struggled with in a certain area that you are discussing or learning about. So this allows students to relate to each other, respond to each other. So that creates a more communicative environment, especially if you're teaching like multiple students at once. And something that I do a lot when I'm teaching tutorials and labs is asking students to elaborate or explain their meaning. So if you do get a relatively short answer to a question, maybe it was an open-ended question, but they didn't answer, they didn't give you very much to work with, ask them to elaborate. Oh, that's very interesting. What do you mean by that? Oh, can you elaborate more on this part of your answer? I thought that was really interesting. So asking a student to talk a little bit more maybe gets them thinking a little bit more about their response. And it also just allows them a little bit more room, a little bit more ability to discuss and think in their groups. I think you're muted, Danielle.
Sorry. So we have a little activity for us now. So we have 4 questions on the screen here. So I want us to take a second, just maybe like a minute, to read through the questions and think whether or not these questions are open-ended or are they closed-ended questions based on what Brendan just told us about those types of questions. And then if it is a closed-ended question, is there a way that we can adapt that to make that more open-ended, to facilitate discussion, to facilitate better communication with our students? So I'll read them out to us, and then if you just take a minute to think, and then if you want to raise your hand or, put your answer in the chat, then we can have a discussion about that as well. So the first question, what do you hope to learn most through the course of this session? Is the information in this course easy to understand? Did you already know what rapport meant before this presentation? And what is the most valuable skill for a TAGA to possess and why? So take a minute, think it through, and then we'll come back and we'll have a discussion about this for just a couple of minutes. All righty. I know that was really quick, but we have a much longer activity at the end for us. So let's start with this first question. What do you hope to learn most through the course of this session? Do you think of this as open-ended or close-ended? What makes us think that? Yes, Stephen?
Yeah, I think it is an open-ended question because it requires a responder to elaborate on whatever that he or she say.
Yeah, this is, and I see this is the same answer in the chat as well. This is definitely an open-ended question. There's a lot of personal opinion required. There's a lot of different answers that could be given. So that's absolutely right. This is an open-ended question. So for that second question here, is the information in this course easy to understand? Do we think this is open or closed? And why? Yeah. Pavitra?
Hey, good morning. I think it is a closed-ended question because it's kind of, is it the information in this course is easy to understand? We normally say yes or no, so it's a closed-ended question. So in order to make it as a open-ended question, we can ask something like, what do you feel from this course? Is it what are the interesting part which you like from this course? And how can you elaborate on these? And what are the favorite topics from your from this particular course? I think these might be an open-ended question.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Sri Devi?
Okay, it is a close-ended question actually, and alternatively, I would ask like, uh, what does rapport mean to you? And can you give me some example where you had a good rapport with somebody? That kind of question. Maybe I would ask that kind of question.
Right, you're absolutely right again. So we actually kind of touched on the second or the third question here as well, and I see that in the chat as well. So both of these two are both close-ended questions. They kind of don't lead to open discussion or thoughtful responses from the students. It's kind of yes or no responses, which I see a lot mirrored in the chat. So that's awesome. And thank you to everyone who put something in about how we could change those questions to better reflect an open-ended response and elicit some communication from our students. So then finally, for this last question, is this, in our opinion, more open or closed? So Debbie, is your hand? Okay. Yeah, I see it in the chat. This is definitely an open-ended question, right? Lots of different responses available, lots of explanation and communication and openness with the students. So that's awesome. So thank you everyone for your participation in that little activity. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about how to kind of create or foster a positive learning environment. So a positive environment, basically at its heart, is one that is conducive to learning, where we're fostering, where we're promoting learning, and the students feel comfortable with either each other in a larger or small group setting, with us as the GA or TA, comfortable to come to us, comfortable to discuss with us and share their opinions, their concerns, and ask questions, and then also comfortable with the instructor, of course. So some characteristics of a positive learning environment include active engagement. So, we want everybody to be taking an active role in their learning, participating in class assessments, activities, asking questions where they have some. Coming to see you for your office hours if that's something that you have as part of your contractual duties. A positive environment also encourages respect. So this is a mutual respect between you respecting the students, right? And the students respecting you. It also encourages an enthusiastic attitude. So, there is this common goal in a learning environment. Everybody's there to learn. You are there to help foster students' learning and foster their growth and development in that area. And they are there, hopefully, to try to do their best to learn. So that enthusiastic attitude is really important. And that closely relates to taking an active role in their learning, right? Open to ideas and challenges. That's also one that is a big deal in a positive learning environment. Especially for these open-ended questions, depending on the context or the subject matter that your course is aligned with, being open to different perspectives on things or different ideas that may challenge your own personal viewpoints, that's important to acknowledge because it creates an environment for you to have a discussion with students or develop that rapport and that communication. I'm trying to understand where you're coming from with this. Can you explain it to me? And being open to those different perspectives or those different ways at approaching problems can really help to promote that positive environment where students feel comfortable or positive to come to you with concerns or questions or even for advice. And then a positive learning environment also fosters or hinges on an acknowledgement of diversity and inclusivity, right? So all of our students, as I said at the beginning, we're in an online session right now. So there may be people who aren't in Windsor. There may be people who aren't in Ontario or Canada or even, North America. So it's important to understand that people are coming to you, to your classes, to your office hours or your different learning sessions with different backgrounds, with different experiences. So that positive learning environment can really be promoted by acknowledging that and enhancing or promoting that belief that, we have this really diverse background and all of our students are coming to us with these really unique perspectives, and they can even teach us or the instructor something based on what their lived experience or their opinions are based on things. Of course, this is all dependent on subject matter, right? But for the most part, those diverse experiences, those diverse opinions can really help foster the learning environment. So why is it important for us to foster these group dynamics? So these group dynamics can really push things forward with respect to group discussions. So when students feel respected, when they feel happy to be there, to be in, your office hours or in the class or in whatever type of environment it is, and being open to having discussions, it can really push things to a much deeper level. So asking those open-ended questions and being open to having discussions can lead to a much deeper understanding of the content. And when we have that respect, when we have that enthusiasm, it can make these kind of interactions, these discussions, this communication, it can make it much more stable, and it can make students feel more motivated to come to you, whether it be for help or if they need to express concern or something like that. They're going to feel much more motivated if they feel like it's a positive learning environment. And finally, fostering this positive learning environment allows for students to practice their communication skills and their team working skills because they feel comfortable to communicate with you or with their peers or with the instructor. They feel comfortable to communicate and work with you or with their peers to reach that common goal.
Okay, and our next section is on empathy and understanding. I believe that empathy and understanding are incredibly important to foster as a TA or a GA. To be empathetic means to understand and to feel what somebody else is feeling. So I believe, and this is a philosophy that I try to carry with me as a TA, that it costs nothing to be kind. Most students want to do well, and most teachers will want their students to do well. So extending a little bit of empathy and understanding to your students ensures that they have the greatest ability to do well. So as a teacher, you want to encourage students to give their best to your class. So in my opinion, being needlessly punitive does not endear yourself to students, and it may not even be in students' best interests. So if you are able to be a little bit more lenient, give a little bit more grace to students, let's say there's a deadline for an assignment at midnight and they handed it in at 2 or 3 in the morning. Evidently, they were probably up pretty late trying to finish this assignment. So instead of taking off a late mark for a couple hours being behind the deadline, give them a little bit of grace. I'm not going to take any points off of this assignment because they handed it in within a reasonable time frame after the deadline. And this is something that I do as a TA. If they hand in their assignment before I get up in the morning and start marking, so if I get up at 8 or 9 in the morning to start grading, if they got it in before then, they don't need to take off any late marks. So that's just something that I do to extend some empathy and understanding to students, try to be a little bit reasonable, instead of being needlessly punitive, because that doesn't feel good for them. They maybe tried very hard and they just weren't able to get it in on time. So giving them a little bit of extra room is just something that a lot of students appreciate. Sometimes there is a lesson to be learned in failure, but in some cases, it's not due to any fault of the student, and they can benefit from some understanding and generosity. So, for example, if a student emails you, hey, my cat died last week. I'm having a really hard time. I don't think I'm going to be able to finish this essay. Can I have a couple days of extension? That's not really their fault. It's a situation that they can't really do anything about. And you can show some empathy and understanding. Oh, yes, I understand my cat died a few years ago. I know how that feels. Yes, you can have a few extra days. If I try not to say no to extensions if I can. Some professors prefer to have the power to give extensions. But if you're a TA or GA or an instructor and you have the ability to grant extensions, if you can be understanding, a lot of students really appreciate that. However, if it's becoming more of a recurrent issue, that's when your empathy and understanding can take a little bit backseat and you say, well, this is your fourth assignment, you handed in late. I think we need to talk about some organizational skills, something like that. So while you can take appropriate measures when things aren't being handed in on time, if you have a little bit of empathy and understanding towards students who are having a hard time or a challenge, then a lot of students really appreciate that. So how can we develop empathy as a TA or GA? Remember that everybody has lives that can affect their schoolwork, and you can recall times that a teacher has shown you empathy or leniency and how that was helpful to you. So you only see your students for a few hours a week, if you're a TA that maybe only marks remotely, maybe you don't see students at all. So you have no idea what's going on in a student's life behind the scenes. So maybe they're having a really hard time, something with their mental health, maybe they're not physically well. So extending a little bit of empathy may really, really help that student, and they're going through something that you have no idea about. So if you can extend a little bit of empathy and grace for those students, you can also remember when a professor has shown you empathy or leniency and that was helpful to you. Like if you handed in something that was a few days late and you apologize, so sorry, I got really stressed out. I couldn't handle this in on time, and your professor took a little bit of grace with you, then he'd be like, oh man, I should take some grace and some leniency with my students because I remember how good that felt when my professor helped me out. So that maybe helped you develop some empathy because you have been in the same situation before. And to further develop this empathy, you can also look back on times where you felt understood by your instructor. What language did they use in their communication and what techniques did they use? So maybe it was an email correspondence. So you can go back and read those emails of my professor made me feel very understood when they said this. Or if it was over office hours, did they make eye contact with you, nod, show empathy with their body language? So you can model your behavior after behavior that you have witnessed that you felt understood and empathized with. So some more examples of showing empathy. I touched on this a little bit already, but if it is in your power, you can grant extensions and leniency in situations where students have expressed a challenge or setback. So if they email you with enough advance notice, asking for an extension, say, yes, I can give you an extra 2 days to work on this assignment. Something that I like to do as a TA, especially with my first year classes, with a lot of students who are very new to post-secondary education, is offering extra guidance or office hours or workshops if you know students need extra support. Say you get several emails asking very similar questions about an assignment. You can send out a mass email or post on what is it now? It's not Blackboard anymore. I forget. Whichever it is. Brightspace, sure. To offer an extra workshop. Say, yes, a lot of students have been emailing me asking about how to form citations. If you come to this office at this time, I'm just going to go over citations because I know a lot of people are struggling with it. Something like that. So if a lot of students are having the same problem, it might be like maybe more students are even struggling with it than have even emailed you. So it might be a bigger problem. So offering extra support like that is beneficial for a lot of students. And again, using active listening. If communication is happening face-to-face in person, it's beneficial to use your active listening skills like your body language, eye contact, repeating after students to make sure you understand what they're saying, just so they know that you are understanding where they're coming from. So some language to use to show empathy and understanding. I understand that. I see that you're feeling, and I will do my best to help. So I understand that you're frustrated about the mark that you received. I see that you're feeling overworked. Here's our solution that we can come up with. So the students really feel listened to and that they are respected by you as well.
So on the flip side of the empathy and understanding, it is very common that we as GAs or TAs are going to experience conflict on some level, whether it be minor, if, a student just doesn't agree with their mark, or on a higher level of, a contentious student of some sort. So what is conflict? Conflict at its heart is a disagreement or opposition due to differences or like actual or perceived differences in the interests, ideas, goals, or values. So if a student doesn't think that you're actually there to help them, if they think that, as Brennan said, you're being needlessly punitive for something, or if they think that you're out to get them because they've been getting bad marks on multiple assessments, or then from the flip side, if a student is coming to you and being very contentious or disrespectful. So there are different types of conflict, but based on those types of conflict, there is this retaliation cycle, and this is based on perceptions of events. So typically an event occurs. So in this case, we'll use the example of, a student got a bad mark on an assessment. So the student does the assessment, you mark it, they get a bad mark. The student perceives that event as something that was needlessly punitive. They don't agree with your marking. So they develop or demonstrate this defensive anger. You get an email or they come to your office hours, you didn't mark this fairly. I want to see and then the attack. I want to see the marking scheme. I want you to fix this, et cetera, right? And then that just becomes cyclical in nature, because that attack is then the event that you perceive as them coming at you with contention, with negative affect or negative motives behind their action. And then it just becomes this cyclical. So breaking this cycle through conflict resolution strategies is really important for us as GAs and TAs. So what are some conflict resolution strategies? So I have 7 up here. So the first 6 up here are they go hand in hand together. They work together. And then that 7th one is really when you need to kind of escalate if the conflict has gotten a little bit beyond what you as a GA or TA are capable of handling on your own. So at the start of it, if a student comes to you, for the sake of this session, let's say we get either an email or the student is coming to office hours relating to, they're unhappy about a grade that they received. So the first step in really kind of enhancing that rapport, getting back to that positive rapport and positive communication between you and the student, is acknowledging that there is a conflict. So as Brennan said, with that empathy and understanding and with the active listening, just actively, I understand that you're unhappy with your grade, okay? Like acknowledging that there is something that one of you is upset about and that needs to be handled. As a GATA, a lot of times as a human being, a lot of times when people come to us in defensive anger or with something that we perceive as an attack, we get defensive as well, or we start recoiling into our emotions about things. So it's really important in our positions as GAs and TAs to do our best to remain calm, because our emotional outbursts towards students is not going to help resolve the situation in any kind of way. So while we're acknowledging the conflict, also realize that the problem in the rapport and the communication is the conflict itself. You're not fighting each other, you're trying to work together to solve a conflict or a different, you're trying to meet each other in the middle with this. So try your best to remain calm, okay? Alongside those is listening and trying to understand what the problem is. So is the student unhappy because they didn't understand where they lost marks on the assessment, or are they unhappy because they didn't understand the content? They didn't feel that the content was easily understandable from the instructor or from you as a GATA? Or is there something else? So what is the heart of the problem? What are they trying to get across here? Why are they upset? Or what is the root of the conflict? As we know from when Brennan was talking about active listening, summarize and clarify your understanding. So you're listening to the student discuss what they're upset about or what the conflict is. Summarize that when you hear back from them. Okay, from what I hear, I understand that you got a poor grade on the assessment and you're unhappy because the answers were unclear or you didn't understand where you lost marks. Or clarify your understanding, right? If that problem is not really clear, if that underlying problem for the conflict is not clear, clarifying that understanding is really important so that you can both come to that positive communication, enhance that rapport between the two of you again, or the group of you again, to get back to that level playing field and have that positive communication, that open discussion to try to resolve the conflict. We're humans, right? Sometimes we make mistakes, even as GAs or TAs. So if necessary, if there is something that, we did wrong, apologize for that. Sometimes in a lot of the courses that we do, there's multiple GAs or TAs assigned to the course to help mark. So you may not have marked that particular student's assessment, or you may not have marked a question. So if a student comes to you and they said, I don't understand where I lost marks, it's the answer is right here. Another person or you may have missed their answer. So it's important, or it may have been worded in a way that you didn't expect or weren't looking for. So if necessary, apologize for that mistake, right? Owning up to our mistakes helps foster that relationship, right? Because they're going to respect, okay, they made a mistake, they're going to try to fix it as best they can. So generating those potential solutions, I made the mistake here. I see that you actually answered this. I'm going to do my best to talk to the instructor so that we can get your grade to actually reflect your answers. This doesn't mean that you're going to do this all the time. And a lot of times you as a GATA do not have the power to actually change a grade. That onus is on the instructor, but you can bring it to their attention. So generating those potential solutions. If the conflict is that the student just feels that they didn't understand the content, or the way the instructor was discussing it in class didn't make sense to them, a potential solution might be, coming together as a group to have a discussion about it outside of class during your office hours or doing it during a meeting, right? So to give them a different perspective on the content that's being covered in the course. So a lot of this is going to have to be applicable to what the specific situation is. But at the end of the day, if the combination of all of these strategies doesn't work, then your next step is going to be to escalate it to the instructor. So even still, if there is a potential solution, generated, you want to kind of loop in the instructor so that they know this is what's going on. I've been having conflicts with some students. As Brennan said, students aren't understanding how to write citations, so I'm going to offer a workshop for students to come. That way the instructor is aware of what's going on. And like I said, if none of these conflict resolution strategies work together, then escalating it to the instructor, telling the student, okay, I don't feel like we're coming to a solution here, so I'm going to chat with the instructor of this course and have a discussion, and they will reach out to you, or you can reach out to them. Something like that. Just your instructor needs to know if there are conflicts, or if there are changes to grades or anything like that needs to be done, because ultimately at the end of the day, they are the ones that are in charge of the course. Okay, so before we move on to our activity, I just want to touch base for a second and see if anybody has any questions about anything. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the activity now. So what we're going to do with the majority of the time that we have left to us, we have two kind of email excerpts that are, de-identified, so we can use them here. So what we want to do is Brendan's going to go first, and we're going to review the emails that we received. And based on those emails, we'll give you a couple of minutes to kind of write down some ideas of how you may wish to handle the situation, and either from a conflict resolution standpoint or as a way to improve rapport. So what would you do following this email to try to improve the rapport with that student? And then as a group, after we've had a couple of minutes to think and jot down some ideas, we'll bring it back and we'll have a discussion about each email. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Brennan.
Okay, so this is based on an email that I got teaching as a TA, so as an undergraduate student. Hi, TA. My question was about my grade on the last assignment. I don't think that my mark properly reflected the work I handed in. I disagree with almost every note made on my essay. Some comments are made on the use of certain language in my essay. I used these terms to distinguish between the two comparison points, and I do not think it is informal language as you say. In my own experience and life, I have been allowed to use this language, and I do not see how it diminishes my writing. There is another note saying that the in-text citation and page number go at the end of the sentence, but that would not work as I was citing the quote and not the point I made at the end of the sentence. The second to last note says that the ending paragraph was done in the wrong style and does not follow the instructions. The paragraph does follow the given way to write the paragraph, but I needed to expand the paragraph to sum up the ideas talked about and the supporting arguments for the ideas. If I did not add a period, it would be a run-on sentence. The last note says that the word count needs to include the in-text citations, which I did not do as my other assignments had asked them to remove them from the word count. I thought they should be removed as they were not ideas or supporting information, they are a citation. My logic was that I don't include a bibliography in the word count, why would I include the in-text citations? From student. So we can take a couple minutes here, think about some appropriate ways to respond to an email, and then we'll come back and discuss.
Okay, I know that was relatively quick, but just for the sake of time, I think we should come together to have a discussion. So either in chat or, raising your hands. I'll let Brennan lead because it's her. But, just how would you respond to improve rapport or conflict resolution?
Anne, do you have an idea?
Yes, I do. So in reading the email, it sounds like that it's just there's a lot of logistic issues here the student is having difficulty with. I'd probably respond and suggest a meeting. And in the meeting, like I would acknowledge that they're frustrated, upset. They felt that, the mark was unfair due to these logistic issues, and then go through each one and talk to them about, following the guidelines of the program instructor, whatever their preferences around word count with, the in-text citations and whatnot. And hopefully by doing that would resolve their issue.
Yeah, that's a pretty good response. That's pretty similar to what I did. I find that having a face-to-face conversation kind of helps to de-escalate conflict, while it's pretty easy to get into an argument over email because you can kind of depersonalize the person on the other side of the screen. So if you're talking to someone face-to-face, you're a little bit more understanding, just by the nature of like being in the same room with someone. So offering them a meeting is a really good way to help resolve this conflict. So thank you for that. Does anybody else have any ideas? Oh, in the chat, I see to make the student understand, the student is understood. Yeah. Yeah. So citations are something that students really struggle with. So, I mean, just like offering a resource, for example, for like how to cite things properly. So you're not running into that problem again in the future. I saw another hand. Did someone have something else to say? Yes.
Yes, I believe that, for example, we can say thank you at the beginning. For example, thank you for reaching out and sharing your concern about the feedback on your assignment. And after that, we talk about, for example, language use, in-text citation, paragraph structure, and style, or word count, or citations, and we get some description about all of them.
All right, thank you so much. I'm also seeing other responses in the chat. Give them examples of citations is also a really good way to make sure they are understanding the correct way of doing things. Because I'm honestly, I do that all the time. I'm just like, where does that comma go? Like, just give them an example of something correctly done, so they're able to do it correctly in the future. Thank them for bringing this to my attention. Acknowledge their frustration. Suggest scheduling a time to discuss. Very good. Yep. In addition to other suggestions, we can also provide them with info. Yes, the writing support desk. I like to give a little announcement before I grade assignments sometimes, is like, hey, I don't necessarily have time to go over every single student's rough draft with them if they have a problem. However, the writing support desk is a very valuable resource for students who are struggling with an assignment or their writing in general. So yes, that's another really good tip.
All righty. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions to this email. So moving on. To the next email section. So this is an email I received. Well, these are excerpts from emails. I didn't want to include the entire thing, but this is the part I wanted us to focus on here. So this was I as an instructor and a student was contesting their grade. So this first little blurb here is my response to their initial email, part of my response. So moving forward with myself and other instructors, I would be conscious of tone and how you address your comments, as this came across as disrespectful and unprofessional. Whether you perceive some of these points as arbitrary or not, this is a general assessment of your abilities to assess error in data that is presented. I know out of context, but this was my general response to their initial email. And then this longer blurb is their response to this. I would ask that you clarify where it is you find a tone and disrespect within the email and its context. Discrediting my email with the use of charged word, labeling it unprofessional, is potentially manipulative. I reread the email multiple times to ascertain the area this would be determined and have not found this claim to be accurate from my own perspective. We seem to have a different understanding on this. Therefore, can you elaborate further on your thought process here? I believe it to be fair to state that disagreement regarding the content we are discussing, along with the provision of evidence, is not grounds to make a claim of being unprofessional if it is not in line with your own views or assumptions. I use your statement as of saying I perceive things to be arbitrary. The word perceive means interpret or regard in a particular way in combination with arbitrary, meaning based on random choice or personal whim. This statement you made directly to me implies that I am attempting to make a claim in a particular way that is for personal gain. Knowing each answer I provided on the assignment was articulated based on the exact wording of the scenario and questions, this feels antagonistic. As well, it feels as though I am being exploited in my views on these topics and concerns relating to my work, even with strong support for each claim due to the power imbalance of being a first-year university student. So I'll give you a second. As I said, these are out of context. These are in relation to a much larger email chain with this student. So just take a minute, think of how you might want to improve rapport or, resolve some of this conflict, and then we'll come back and discuss like we did previously. No, so the first excerpt, the excerpt on the left of the screen, the smaller excerpt, is my initial response to their first email. And then the second excerpt, the long blurb, is their response to those comments that I made. Okay, so we'll slowly start up a discussion now because I see it in the chat. So one-on-one meeting, if things still escalate, ask the professor to take charge. So yep, that's definitely an option. I did try to, ask the student if they wanted a one-on-one meeting. And ask the professor to take charge is definitely a good idea. If you were to receive something like this as a GA or TA, this is well beyond your scope of responding or conflict. Any other ideas on how we can, improve rapport here with the student? Or Anne?
Hi, yeah, I'm just looking at the list that you gave us on strategies. Maybe you're acknowledging the conflict in your response to her somewhat, and or him or whoever it is, apologize if necessary. Will an apology help, sort of bring the temperature down of the whole situation, and just be like, okay, clearly you don't feel heard. I apologize if you feel offended by my use of language. I'm interested in finding a resolution to this issue, and then sort of let's have a plan going forward, because this could just go on and on forever.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So taking accountability, maybe I did use charged language in this. This was in response to a previous email. So taking accountability for the language I used, maybe this wasn't perceived appropriately or perceived the way I had intended it by the student. So taking accountability for that, asking for that one-on-one meeting to have an actual discussion, because as Anne said, as a lot of us know, when we get stuck in these email chains, it can definitely just keep going endlessly and become needlessly antagonistic. Okay, so a comment, I think I would first do some self-reflection, did I perceive something as disrespectful when it wasn't? Am I being objective? I'd also maybe want to schedule an in-person meeting to discuss this so we can resolve this issue. I also want to reassure them that I'm here to help them and not to antagonize them. If I've done something wrong, I will apologize and work on it. That's absolutely true. So, you know, thinking back, like, was this, so maybe at this point, you know, looping in the instructor, or if you are an instructor, looping in the department head for an idea, you know, was this out of pocket here? Should I have communicated in a different way? As I said, these are a little bit out of context because these are only excerpts of much longer emails. So keeping that in mind. But yes, if it was something just like this, trying to be, okay, and was I wrong here? Apologize, ask for an in-person meeting to kind of bring things back to a mutual understanding. Matt says, I would avoid a long email chain. I would want to set an in-person meeting. Yeah, that's always kind of like the first kind of option when you're getting emails from students where they don't understand something. Rather than explaining over email, trying to set an in-person meeting, or even, you know, a virtual meeting to have an actual conversation is going to help facilitate that understanding and that rapport so much better than emails back and forth. But of course, with that, the student has to be open to coming to a meeting. Call an in-person meeting. Yeah. How exactly did I resolve this? So I was the course instructor for this course. So after this email that I received from the students, I did ask the department head for advice, and I did end up, even in my initial email to them, I asked for an in-person meeting, but the student was very reluctant to meeting in person. So I asked for an in-person meeting again. They said they didn't want to come and that they just wanted to drop the issue altogether. So unfortunately, there was no real resolution to this, but my my rapport, my communication with this student further throughout the course, it did improve, just because we had a conversation and we did, you know, resolve things. But in the email chain, things were not resolved. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so just to bring things back. So just to bring things back to cover everything we covered, I know we could different, you know, strategies for increasing rapport with our students, but we are at the end of our sessions. So we did talk about some effective communication techniques and how to foster a positive learning environment with our students. We talked about developing empathy and understanding towards our students' experiences and their challenges, and how to understand the use of these different conflict resolution strategies with a practical kind of exercise. So bringing it to the end here, Brennan and I just want to say thank you. And if you have any questions, please let us know. We'll stick around for a couple of minutes. But otherwise, I will stop the recording now.